Everyone expected me to cry, to scream, to beg for what was rightfully mine. Instead, I smiled, signed my resignation letter, and walked out of that glass tower with a plan worth $1.2 million brewing in my mind. They thought silence meant weakness. They thought taking 5 months of my bonuses would break me. But sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous. And I was about to prove exactly how expensive their mistake would be. My name is Avery Linwood, and I've spent the last 8 years being invisible at Magneton Systems. Not the bad kind of invisible, the strategic kind. The kind where you deliver exceptional results while letting others take the spotlight. At 34, I'd perfected the art of being indispensable, yet unnoticed. A senior data analyst who could make numbers sing but never raised her voice above a professional murmur. The Columbus skyline stretched before me through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Conference Room B, 23rd floor. I'd been in this exact spot countless times, but today felt different. Today, HR Director Patricia Holbrook sat across from me with that practiced sympathetic smile that meant nothing good was coming. Avery, as you know, we're restructuring our compensation framework, she began, sliding a folder across the pristine glass table. The new KPI system better aligns with company objectives moving forward. I opened the folder. The numbers blurred for a moment before crystallizing into a truth that hit like ice water. 5 months of performance bonuses, gone. Not future bonuses, ones I'd already earned. Nearly $47,000 vanished with corporate doublespeak and an apologetic shrug. This affects bonuses from January through May, Patricia continued, her manicured nails tapping against her iPad. The board decided the previous metrics didn't adequately reflect. I saved the company $800,000 last year. My voice came out steady, which surprised even me. The automated inventory system I designed, the predictive analytics model that prevented 3 major supply chain disruptions, that was all under the previous metrics. Patricia's smile tightened. We appreciate your contributions. Avery. This isn't personal. 17 employees are affected by this transition. 17 employees. I knew exactly who they were, mostly women. A few men who didn't golf with the executives on weekends. The ones who did the work while others did the networking. And Darren Foss signed off on this? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Our new chief operating officer had been making his mark for 6 months now, restructuring everything he could get his hands on. The executive team unanimously approved the changes. Unanimous? I thought about last month when Darren had cornered me after a meeting, suggesting I join his Strategic Innovation Committee, 8 men who met at his country club to discuss the future of the company. When I'd politely declined, citing my workload, his expression had shifted from friendly to something else entirely. Your Q3 bonus will reflect the new system, Patricia was saying. We're confident that once you adjust to the new KPIs... Thank you for explaining, I interrupted, closing the folder. Is there anything else? She blinked, clearly expecting more resistance. Tears, maybe. Anger. The other women had probably given her both. But I'd learned long ago that showing emotion in this building was like bleeding in shark-infested waters. No, that's all. Avery, if you want to discuss this further, I understand the company's position. I stood, smoothing my pencil skirt. I should get back to the Morrison Industries integration. The data migration won't manage itself. I walked back to my desk with measured steps, passing the cubicles where my colleagues avoided eye contact. News traveled fast in corporate America. By now, everyone knew about the bonus massacre. My workspace was meticulous, like everything else in my life. 3 monitors displaying cascading data streams, color-coded project folders, a single photo of my sister's kids. No personal achievements on display, no Employee of the Month certificates, though I had a drawer full at home. I sat down and pulled up the Morrison Industries files, but the numbers swam meaninglessly. $47,000. That was my mother's cancer treatment copays. The down payment on a house I'd finally saved enough for. 5 months of working 60-hour weeks, debugging code at midnight. saving the company from its own incompetence. My phone buzzed. A text from Darren Foss. Sorry to hear about the bonus situation. My door's always open if you want to discuss advancement opportunities. I stared at the message, feeling something cold and precise click into place in my chest. Not rage. Rage was messy, unpredictable. This was different. This was clarity. I deleted his text and opened a new spreadsheet. Not for Magneton. For me. Column A. Every system I'd built. Column B. Every vulnerability I'd patched. Column C. Every secret I'd kept. They thought I was weak because I was quiet. They thought I was defeated because I didn't fight. They had no idea what silence could do when it finally decided to speak. I stayed. That was the first thing that surprised them. While others who'd been hit by the bonus cuts started updating their LinkedIn profiles and taking long lunches for doctor's appointments. I arrived earlier, stayed later, and produced work that was, if anything, more meticulous than before. 2 months. That's what I gave myself. 2 months to become a ghost in the machine, to document everything while appearing to do nothing more than my job. The executive floor had always been off-limits to analysts unless specifically summoned, but I'd built their dashboards. I knew their login patterns, their favorite reports, their digital fingerprints. Darren Foss, for instance, checked the revenue projections every morning at 6:47 a.m. from his phone while on his Peloton. Patricia Holbrook accessed HR files most frequently on Thursday afternoons, right before her standing tennis lesson. I started small, creating shadow copies of my own systems. Every piece of code I'd written, every algorithm I'd optimized, every security patch I'd implemented, I documented not just what they did, but what would happen if they didn't. The company's digital infrastructure was a house of cards, and I'd been the one carefully placing each card for 8 years. Working late again? Marcus from IT stopped by my desk one evening, his concerned face illuminated by my monitor's glow. Just documenting processes, I replied, fingers never pausing on the keyboard. Want to make sure everything's clear for whoever needs it. He nodded slowly. Marcus was one of the good ones, had been there even longer than me. Avery, about what happened with the bonuses. It's fine, Marcus. It's not fine. It's bullshit. He lowered his voice. Darren's been pushing to outsource data analysis to his buddy's firm in Chicago. That's what this is really about. I finally looked up. How do you know that? His assistant forgot to lock her screen last week. I saw the email thread when I was fixing her dual monitor setup. Marcus glanced around nervously. They're planning to phase out the whole department by Q1 next year. The cold precision in my chest sharpened into something crystalline. Interesting. Interesting. Avery, they're going to... Marcus, I interrupted gently. Do you remember when you helped me set up the automated backup system? Yeah? Make sure your personal projects are backed up externally. Update your portfolio, just in case. He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. Yeah. Okay. You too. Right? Of course. After he left, I pulled up the infrastructure documentation I'd been compiling. Magneton systems ran on 3 critical platforms I'd personally integrated: the client management system, the supply chain predictor, and the financial forecasting model. They were interconnected in ways that only I fully understood because I'd built the bridges between them. I began mapping the vulnerabilities. Not to exploit them, that would be illegal and beneath me. But to understand just how precarious their position was without someone who knew where all the bodies were buried. The client management system, for instance, had a legacy authentication protocol I'd been asking them to update for 2 years. They'd refused, citing budget constraints, the same budget that somehow found room for Darren's $2.3 million renovation of the executive floor. The supply chain predictor relied on an API that required manual certificate renewal every 6 months. I'd been the only one doing it, setting calendar reminders that I'd never bothered to share because nobody had ever asked. And the financial forecasting model, my masterpiece, the thing that had saved them $800,000, had hard-coded dependencies that I'd documented only in my personal notes. Notes that technically belonged to me since I developed the initial framework on my own time, before implementing it at Magneton. I watched Darren through the glass walls of his corner office, feet up on his desk during a conference call, gesturing expansively at nothing. He'd been hired from outside, brought in to modernize operations. In 6 months, he'd promoted 3 of his former colleagues, restructured 4 departments, and now he was coming for mine. My phone buzzed, another text from him. Drinks with the Innovation Committee tonight. Would love your input on the Q4 strategy. I typed back, thank you for thinking of me. Unfortunately, I have commitments. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, your loss. Yes, I thought, saving another file to my personal cloud storage, but not mine. That night, I stayed until the cleaning crew arrived. Rosa, who'd been vacuuming these floors for 15 years, paused by my desk. You okay, miss? You been here late every night. Just organizing things, Rosa, making sure everything's in order. She patted my shoulder with a grandmother's kindness. Don't let them work you too hard. Job's not worth your health. You're right, I said, meaning it. I won't be doing this much longer. As I finally packed up, I looked at my spreadsheet one more time. 3 columns had grown to 15. A comprehensive map of everything I'd built, everything they'd taken for granted, everything they'd need once I was gone. They thought they were pushing me out quietly, professionally, bloodlessly. They had no idea they were helping me load the gun. The resignation letter was 2 sentences long. No explanations, no accusations. Just professional courtesy distilled to its essence. I printed it on the good paper, the kind they used for client proposals, and slipped it into a crisp white envelope. Patricia Holbrook's face went through 3 distinct expressions when I handed it to her on a Tuesday morning. Surprise, relief, and then something that might have been panic. 2 weeks? She scanned the letter again, as if more words might appear. Avery, this is unexpected. Have you found another position? I have some opportunities I'm exploring. We'd be happy to provide a reference. Your work here has been exemplary. That won't be necessary. I kept my voice pleasant, neutral. I've already made arrangements. She shifted in her ergonomic chair. The timing is challenging. The Morrison integration is at a critical phase, and you're the lead analyst. I've prepared comprehensive documentation. Everything the team needs is in the shared drive. Organized by project phase, I placed a USB drive on her desk. This contains backup copies of all critical processes, including step-by-step guides for the systems I've managed. Patricia picked up the drive like it might explode. This is very thorough. I believe in smooth transitions. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in professional sabotage disguised as exemplary handover. I trained my replacement, a junior analyst named Trevor who'd been with the company 6 months and still confused Excel with Access. I documented every process with obsessive detail, creating guides so comprehensive they were practically unusable. I held knowledge transfer sessions that buried critical information in avalanches of minor details. But the real work happened in the spaces between. Late at night, I made subtle adjustments to the code I'd written. Nothing malicious. I wasn't a criminal. Just corrections. I removed the elegant workarounds I'd built to compensate for the system's inherent flaws. I restored everything to factory specifications, to exactly what the documentation said it should be. The financial forecasting model, for instance. I'd built in safeguards to prevent the garbage in, garbage out problem that plagued most predictive systems. Now it would accept any input without question, just like the original specifications requested. Technically perfect, practically useless. The client management system's authentication protocol remained unchanged, but I removed my automated monitoring script that had been catching and preventing timeout errors. The system would still work. Until it didn't. Most importantly, I packaged up my AI modeling framework, the one I'd developed on weekends and evenings before implementing a version at Magneton. The company had never formally claimed ownership, never filed patents, never even acknowledged it as separate from their existing systems. Legal had been too busy reviewing Darren's country club membership contracts to bother with intellectual property from a mere analyst. "You sure about this?" Marcus caught me on my last Thursday, voice low. "Walking away from 8 years?" "Marcus, remember what I told you about backing up your work?" His eyes widened slightly. "Yeah. Did it last week." "Good." I handed him a business card. "My personal email, in case you ever need a reference." He pocketed it quickly. "Avery, is something going to happen?" Things happen all the time in technology. Systems age, dependencies update, certificates expire. I smiled. That's why documentation is so important. On my final day, Darren Foss himself descended from the executive floor. He leaned against my cubicle wall with studied casualness, expensive cologne preceding him like a herald. "Heard you're leaving us. Shame. You've been a real asset." "Thank you. You know, it's not too late to reconsider. I'm sure we could work something out. Maybe revisit your compensation package." I looked up from the box I was packing. The company's made its position clear regarding my value. I've simply accepted that assessment. His jaw tightened. "No need to be bitter, Avery. Business is business." I'm not bitter. And I wasn't. Bitterness was corrosive, emotional. What I felt was clarity. I'm grateful for the education. Education? I placed the last of my personal items in the box, just the photo of my sister's kids and a coffee mug. Everything important was already gone, uploaded to servers Magneton would never know existed. "You taught me that loyalty is a luxury companies can't afford. That 5 months of earned bonuses can vanish with a signature. That building something essential doesn't make you essential." I stood, box balanced on my hip. "These are valuable lessons, worth at least $47,000, wouldn't you say?" His face had gone an interesting shade of red. "If you're planning some kind of what?" I met his eyes directly. "I'm leaving with exactly what belongs to me. My personal belongings, my skills, my knowledge. The company keeps everything I built for them. Seems fair." I pulled out my final email to him, printed and sealed in an envelope. "This is for you. Call it an exit interview." He tore it open right there, scanning the single line of text. His frown deepened. "What does this mean?" The email contained 8 words. "Thank you for teaching me that silence is power." It means, goodbye. Darren. I walked out of Magneton Systems at 5:17 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. Security took my badge at the front desk, had me sign the exit paperwork. The guard, Anthony, who'd wished me good morning every day for 8 years, shook my hand. "Good luck out there, Ms. Linwood." "Thank you, Anthony. Take care of yourself." The October air was crisp, carrying the promise of change. As I waited for my Uber, I pulled out my personal phone and opened the monitoring app I'd built. Every system I'd created was still humming along perfectly. The dashboard showed green across the board. For now. My driver pulled up, and I slid into the back seat with my pathetic box of belongings. As we pulled away from the glass tower, I didn't look back. There was nothing left there that belonged to me. Everything that mattered was already in motion. The consulting firm was small, agile, and hungry. Everything Magneton wasn't. TechFlow Solutions operated out of a converted warehouse in the short north. All exposed brick and standing desks. They'd been trying to poach me for years, but I'd always been too comfortable, too loyal. Now I had different reasons for finally returning their calls. 6-month contract, Rachel Chen explained, sliding the paperwork across her reclaimed wood desk. "We need someone to audit our clients' data infrastructure, identify vulnerabilities, recommend solutions. Your reputation precedes you." I signed without negotiating. The pay was less than Magneton, but money wasn't the point anymore. "When do I start?" "Monday. First client is a financial services firm trying to modernize their systems. Coincidentally, they're considering switching from their current software vendor." She smiled. I believe you're familiar with Magneton's platforms? Perfect. Over the next 3 weeks, I became a student of corporate warfare. Working with TechFlow's clients, I saw Magneton from the outside, how they pitched, where they were vulnerable, what their clients really thought when the sales team wasn't in the room. Their support is garbage, one CTO told me during a system review. Last month, our integration crashed and it took them 3 days to even identify the problem. If we had alternatives. I made notes, careful to remain neutral. What specific features are you looking for in a solution? By week 4, I'd mapped Magneton's entire client ecosystem. I knew which contracts were up for renewal, which clients were unhappy, which systems were being held together with digital duct tape and prayer. Then the first domino fell, exactly on schedule. The authentication certificates I'd mentioned to Marcus expired on a Wednesday night, the ones I'd been manually renewing because Magneton never invested in automation. Without them, 3 major clients couldn't access their data for 14 hours. My phone buzzed with texts from former colleagues. I didn't respond. But I did monitor the situation through public channels, angry tweets from affected companies, a scathing post on our sysadmin about Magneton's amateur hour response. The second domino was more subtle. During my research, I'd connected with James Morrison, yes, from Morrison Industries, the integration I'd been leading before I left. We met for coffee on a rainy Thursday. I have to be honest, he said, stirring his cappuccino. We're not happy with the transition. Your replacement seems overwhelmed. I'm sorry to hear that. Avery, I'll cut to the chase. We know you built most of their systems. We also know you're consulting now. He leaned forward. What would it take to get you to review our integration? Privately, make sure we're not missing anything critical. I named a price. He didn't blink. The review took me 2 days. I found 17 critical errors in the implementation, not sabotage, just the natural result of Trevor trying to manage systems he didn't understand with documentation that was technically complete but practically opaque. If these aren't addressed, you're looking at data corruption within 6 months, I told James. Maybe sooner. What do you recommend? Honestly? Pause the integration, reassess your vendor choice. Magneton systems are sophisticated, but they require specialized knowledge that they've recently lost. James nodded slowly. We're a $900,000 account for them. I'm aware. Would TechFlow be interested in submitting a proposal? I kept my expression neutral. I'd have to ask my team. The third domino was the cleanest. An anonymous post appeared on Glassdoor detailing discriminatory bonus restructuring at a major Columbus software company. The post was careful, factual, included just enough detail to be credible without being libelous. It mentioned no names but painted a picture anyone in the industry could recognize. The post went viral in tech circles. Bonusgate started trending locally. 3 business journalists reached out to me through LinkedIn, having done their homework on recent departures. I politely declined to comment, but others didn't. The whole thing was targeted. A former colleague told Columbus Business First, speaking on condition of anonymity. They gut punch your compensation, then act surprised when you leave. Meanwhile, I haunted industry events like a well-dressed ghost. I attended the Tech Columbus Mixer where Darren was speaking about innovative leadership. I sat in the back, taking notes on my phone, occasionally making eye contact when he scanned the room. His presentation faltered twice. At the AWS conference, I had drinks with procurement managers from 3 Magneton clients. We discussed industry trends, best practices, the importance of vendor reliability. I never mentioned my former employer by name. I didn't have to. Security is everything, I said, sipping my wine. One breach, one extended outage, and trust evaporates. In this climate, can anyone afford that risk? They nodded thoughtfully. 2 of them called their procurement teams the next morning. By the end of my 2nd month at TechFlow, Magneton had lost Morrison Industries and 2 smaller accounts. The official reasons varied: service issues, strategic realignment. budget constraints. The real reason was simpler: doubt. I hadn't destroyed their systems or stolen their clients. I'd just helped the market see what happened when you stripped away the one person who actually understood how everything worked. But I wasn't done. The most elegant part of my plan was yet to come. Because I'd learned something valuable during my 8 years of building Magneton's empire. Sometimes the best revenge isn't breaking something, it's letting them break it themselves. The Columbus Business Journal ran the headline on a Tuesday: Magneton systems under fire, security concerns, and leadership questions. Mount. I read it over breakfast at my favorite cafe, the morning sun casting shadows across my tablet screen. The article was damning without being libelous, factual without being forgiving. 3 major clients confirming they were reassessing their vendor relationships. A data breach that had exposed configuration files, not customer data, thankfully, but enough to shake confidence. Anonymous employees describing a culture of corner-cutting in the wake of the bonus restructuring. My phone buzzed. Marcus. Jesus Christ, Avery. Did you see? I saw. The breach happened because nobody renewed the SSL certificates for the backup servers, the exact ones you used to handle. His voice was strained. They're saying it's going to cost $400K just for the security audit. That's unfortunate. Unfortunate? Avery, they're hemorrhaging clients. Davidson Corp just pulled out of renewal negotiations. That's another $300K gone. I stirred my coffee. How's your job search going? Got an offer yesterday, putting in my notice today. He paused. You knew this would happen. I knew they were understaffed and undervaluing their technical talent. Natural consequences aren't prophecy. Marcus. The real crescendo began at 2:47 p.m. that same day. I was reviewing code at TechFlow when my personal phone lit up with notifications. The tech whistleblower Twitter account, Valley Truth, had posted a thread that was spreading like digital wildfire. Thread: How one company lost 1.2 meters by cheating employees out of bonuses. A story about karma, incompetence, and why you should value your tech talent. The thread was meticulously researched, citing public records, earnings calls, and employee reviews. It connected dots between the bonus cuts and the subsequent exodus of key personnel. It highlighted the correlation between departures and system failures. It included a particularly damaging screenshot of a Slack message where someone in leadership, face blurred but context clear, joked about trimming the fat from the analytics team. I didn't know who ran Valley Truth. I didn't need to. The information was all publicly available for anyone who knew where to look. By 4 p.m., Magneton's stock had dropped 6%. By 5 p.m., local news had picked up the story. By 6 p.m., Darren Foss was in crisis management mode. I know because he called me. Avery. His voice was tight, controlled fury barely contained. We need to talk. Hello, Darren. How can I help you? Cut the act. I know what you're doing. What am I doing? I kept my tone genuinely curious. I'm sitting at my desk, reviewing code for my current employer. The leaks, the clients, this fucking Twitter thread. Are you accusing me of something? I pulled up my recording app, making sure he could hear the distinctive beep. Because that sounds like potential defamation. Should I have my lawyer present for this conversation? Silence. Then, we're prepared to offer you a consulting contract. 6 months, your old salary plus 20%. Come back, fix the systems, help us stabilize. I have a job. Name your price. My price? I laughed, short and sharp. My price was $47,000 in earned bonuses. That window closed. Avery, be reasonable. You're destroying. I'm not destroying anything. I left comprehensive documentation. I trained my replacement. I fulfilled every obligation in my employment contract. I paused. What happens after that isn't my responsibility. You know Trevor can't handle. Then you should have promoted internally, invested in training, retained institutional knowledge. These are management decisions. Darren, your management. His breathing was audible through the phone. The board is asking questions about the restructuring, about my decisions. As they should. This vindictive bullshit isn't like you. You're right. The old me would have quietly absorbed the loss, kept my head down, continued producing exceptional work for people who saw me as expendable. I walked to my window, looking out at the Columbus skyline. The old me was worth exactly what you paid her. The new me knows better. What do you want? Nothing from you. Everyone wants something. I wanted to be valued. That ship sailed. Now? I smiled at my reflection in the window. Now I'm just watching market forces at work, supply and demand, actions and consequences. You're a businessman, Darren. You should understand. He hung up without another word. That evening, the news broke that 3 more clients had announced they were exploring options for their data management needs. The total revenue impact was now estimated at $1.2 million and climbing. Rachel Chen stopped by my desk before leaving for the day. Hell of a thing happening to Magneton. Yes, hell of a thing. She studied me for a moment. We've had 3 inquiries today from their former clients, all asking for you specifically. I'll review them tomorrow. Avery. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I'm glad you're on our side now. As she walked away, I turned back to my monitors. The code I was reviewing was elegant, efficient, nothing like the bloated systems Magneton was struggling to maintain without me. My phone buzzed one more time, a text from an unknown number. You win. Happy now? I didn't recognize the number, but I knew the tone. Patricia Holbrook, probably from her personal phone. I typed back, I'm not unhappy. It was true. Happiness, sadness, anger, those were all too simple for what I felt. This was something colder, more precise. Justice. Maybe. Or just the natural order of things asserting itself. They'd taught me that loyalty was worthless, that dedication could be erased with a signature, that 5 months of earned compensation could vanish because someone wanted to impress the board. I'd simply returned the lesson with interest. The market value of that education, apparently, about $1.2 million, Denver was everything Columbus wasn't. The mountains rose like promises on the horizon. The air felt cleaner. And nobody knew my name. I'd wrapped up my contract with TechFlow 2 weeks after the news broke about Darren Foss being removed from his position. The board's statement cited strategic differences and evolving leadership needs. Corporate speak for, you cost us 7 figures and counting. I didn't celebrate, I just packed. The teaching position at the coding bootcamp wasn't glamorous. The pay was a fraction of what I'd made in corporate. The campus was 3 rooms in a converted strip mall. And my students were mostly women who'd been told they weren't technical enough, mathematical enough, good enough. I knew the feeling. Debugging isn't about finding what's wrong, I told my first class, 15 women ranging from 22 to 57. It's about understanding why something that should work doesn't. Once you understand the why, the fix is usually simple. Maria, a former retail manager, raised her hand. But what if you can't find the why? Then you document everything you tried, step away, and come back with fresh eyes. Sometimes the best debugging happens when you're not looking at the screen. They laughed, thinking I was talking about code. My apartment was small but had a view of the Rockies. I set up my workspace by the window, 3 monitors arranged in a perfect arc. Old habits. But now I use them for building curricula, creating interactive tutorials, developing frameworks that would help my students avoid the traps I'd fallen into. 6 weeks into my new life, I got an email from James Morrison. Avery, heard you're in Denver. Morrison Industries is opening a satellite office there. Would love to discuss opportunities. No pressure, just coffee. I declined politely. That chapter was closed. Marcus texted occasionally with updates. Magneton had hired a consulting firm to rebuild their systems, at 3 times what they'd saved by cutting bonuses. They'd lost 2 more major clients. The stock had recovered somewhat, but analyst confidence was shaken. Trevor had lasted exactly 43 days before having what Marcus delicately called a stress-related departure. They tried to hire back 3 of the analysts they screwed over, he wrote, offered double salaries. Everyone said no. I turned off notifications after that. The past was a country I no longer visited. My students, though, they were the present, and they were brilliant. I don't understand why this function keeps returning undefined, Keisha said during office hours, frustration evident in her voice. She was a single mom, working nights, trying to build a better future. I looked at her code. The error was subtle, the kind that would have taken Magneton's junior developers hours to spot. Walk me through your logic, I said, instead of pointing it out. She did. And halfway through, her eyes widened. Oh, I'm not actually returning the value, I'm just calculating it. And I need to add return. She made the change, ran the test. Green check marks across the board. I did it. You did it, I confirmed. Remember this feeling? The frustration, the breakthrough, the success? That's programming. That's problem solving. That's power. She beamed. And for the first time in months, I felt something uncurl in my chest. Not satisfaction at revenge or vindication at being proven right. Just peace. One evening, grading projects as the sun set behind the mountains. I got a LinkedIn notification. Darren Foss had viewed my profile. No message, no connection request. Just that digital footprint of someone checking up on the person who'd cost them everything. I didn't block him, didn't react at all. He was just another viewer, another statistic. His power over my life had ended the moment I'd handed Patricia that resignation letter. You teach them to code, the boot camp's founder, Elena, said during one of our planning meetings. But more than that, you teach them to value themselves. Where'd you learn that? I thought about lying, giving some inspirational story. Instead, I told the truth. I learned it the hard way, from people who taught me how not to be valued. She nodded slowly. The best teachers usually do. As winter approached, my first cohort was preparing for graduation. 12 of the 15 had job offers already. The other 3 were in final interviews. They'd built portfolios, crushed technical assessments, negotiated salaries that would have made my younger self proud. Ms. Linwood, Maria approached after our final class. I wanted to thank you, not just for the coding, but you showed us that being quiet doesn't mean being weak. What do you mean? You never talk about your past, but we Googled you. She smiled sheepishly. We know what happened, what you did, how you left. My stomach tightened. And we think you're kind of a legend. You didn't yell or sue or go viral with some tell-all. You just let them feel the consequences of their choices. That's the kind of power we want. I looked at these women, brave, brilliant, underestimated women who were about to enter an industry that would try to convince them they were worth less than they were. Then let me teach you one more thing, I said. The most dangerous person in any organization isn't the loudest or the most aggressive. It's the one who knows their worth and acts accordingly. Be that person. They took notes, like I'd given them a technical formula. In a way, I had. That night, I stood on my small balcony, Denver sprawling before me, mountains standing guard in the distance. My phone was quiet. No crisis calls, no emergency fixes, no leadership asking me to save them from themselves. Just silence. But not the heavy silence of being overlooked. The peaceful silence of being free. The coffee shop on 16th Street had become my Saturday morning ritual. Same corner table, same lavender latte, same view of professionals rushing past in their weekend athletic wear. I was reviewing my students' capstone projects when she appeared. Patricia Holbrook looked older, grayer, her corporate armor replaced with jeans and a Colorado State sweatshirt. She stood uncertainly by my table. Hello, Avery. I closed my laptop slowly. Patricia? May I? She gestured to the empty chair. I nodded. I'm visiting my daughter. She goes to CSU. Patricia wrapped her hands around her coffee cup like it might provide warmth for what she needed to say. I retired 6 months ago. I hadn't heard. After everything that happened, the board cleaned house, not just Darren, most of senior leadership. She met my eyes. I've had a lot of time to think about decisions I made, orders I followed, people I failed. I said nothing. This wasn't my conversation to lead. I told myself I was just doing my job, following policy, protecting the company. She laughed, bitter and short. But I knew. I knew what they were doing was wrong. I knew which employees they were targeting. I knew why. And you did it anyway. Yes. The word hung between us. I did it anyway. And I've been thinking about what you said that day. About understanding the company's position. You weren't agreeing with me. You were telling me you understood exactly who we were. Yes. The number everyone throws around is $1.2 million. The contracts lost, the costs to rebuild, the consultants. Patricia's voice dropped. But that's not the real number. 14 people left within 6 months of you. Good people, people who built things, maintained things, understood things. The brain drain was catastrophic. I sipped my latte, waiting. My daughter is studying computer science, she continued. When I told her I was seeing you, she said you were famous. Not infamous, famous. Some Reddit thread called you the woman who proved that revenge is a dish best served with documentation. I almost smiled. I wanted to apologize, Patricia said finally. Not for the company or the board or Darren. For me. I was supposed to be human resources. But I forgot about the human part. I'm sorry. I studied her for a long moment. The Patricia I'd known would never have made this drive, would never have sat in this chair, would never have admitted fault. I accept your apology, I said quietly. And I hope you've learned what I learned. Which is that people aren't resources. They're people. They have worth beyond their productivity. They have lives beyond their jobs. And when you forget that, when you treat them as expendable, I gestured vaguely. Well, you know how that ends. She nodded, stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Avery, I think you did exactly what needed to be done. The old guard needed to fall. It's just a shame it took losing you to make it happen. After she left, I reopened my laptop but couldn't focus. Her visit had stirred up sediment I thought had settled. Not anger, that had burned clean months ago. Not satisfaction, that was too simple for what I felt. It was closure. The final piece clicking into place. That evening, Elena asked me to speak at our graduation ceremony, standing before my students in their business casual best, their families beaming with pride. I thought about what message I wanted to leave them with. When I started teaching here, someone asked me why I left corporate tech. I gave a vague answer about seeking purpose, making a difference. Those things were true, but they weren't the truth. The room was silent, attentive. The truth is, I left because I discovered something. I discovered that knowing your worth isn't arrogance. Demanding fair treatment isn't entitlement. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to accept less than you deserve. I looked at each of my students, Maria, Keisha, all of them. You're entering an industry that might try to underpay you, undervalue you, underestimate you. They might offer you 70 cents on the dollar and tell you to be grateful. They might pass you over for promotions and say you need more experience. They might cut your bonuses and expect you to smile. Several of them nodded, recognizing their own stories in mine. Here's what I want you to remember. Your silence is not consent. Your professionalism is not weakness. And if they mistake those things, if they push too far, if they take too much. I smiled, thinking of Darren's panicked phone call, of Patricia's apology, of $1.2 million in losses. Well, you've learned to code. You know how systems work. You know how they fail. Use that knowledge wisely. The applause was thunderous. Later, as I helped clean up, Keisha approached. Ms. Linwood, are you happy you did it? What happened with your old company? I considered the question. Happy seemed too small a word for the journey from that conference room in Columbus to this converted strip mall in Denver. I'm at peace with it, I said finally. They thought I was weak because I was quiet. But silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's just the calm before you change everything. She nodded like I'd given her a profound truth. Maybe I had. That night, mountains silhouetted against stars, I stood on my balcony and thought about power. Not the kind Darren had wielded, crude and obvious. Not the kind Patricia had exercised, bureaucratic and cold. Real power was knowing your worth and acting accordingly. Real power was building something they couldn't maintain without you. Real power was walking away and letting them discover exactly what they'd lost. They'd stolen 5 months of bonuses. It had cost them everything. I'd been quiet. It had given me everything. The wind picked up, carrying the promise of snow. I smiled, went inside, and began preparing Monday's lesson plan. My students were starting JavaScript next week. I couldn't wait to teach them about cause and effect, about functions and returns, about how one small change in the code could cascade through an entire system. They'd learn the syntax, but more importantly, they'd learn the power. After all, the best revenge isn't breaking something, it's knowing how it breaks and letting it happen. Naturally. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of corporate karma and quiet revenge, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever experienced something similar in your workplace? I'd love to hear your story. Until next time, remember, know your worth, document everything, and never underestimate the power of silence.